The diner hummed with the familiar sounds of a Tuesday afternoon. The clink of silverware, the murmur of conversations, the sizzle from the kitchen. Grace Mitchell moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing plates and smiles with equal ease. At 28, she'd been waitressing at Riverside Diner for 3 years, saving every spare dollar toward finishing. The speech therapy degree she'd had to put on hold when her mother got sick. Grace wore the standard uniform, a blue-collared shirt and white apron, but there was something about the way she moved through the space that suggested she was meant for more than taking orders. She noticed things. The elderly man who came in every Wednesday and always ordered the same thing but seemed so lonely. The teenage girl who sat for hours over a single cup of coffee, clearly needing a safe place to exist. The details that most people missed. Today, she noticed the little boy. He sat in a corner booth with a man who was clearly his father. Same dark hair, same serious eyes, though the man's were shadowed with something that looked like exhaustion mixed with worry. The boy appeared to be about 7 years old, wearing a blue plaid shirt, and he sat very still, his hands folded on the table, his eyes downcast. Grace had seen them come in several times over the past few weeks. The father always ordered for both of them, grilled cheese and chocolate milk for the boy, coffee and a sandwich for himself. But what struck Grace most was the silence. The boy never spoke, never asked for anything, never complained, never made a sound. And the father, despite his expensive suit and watch that probably cost more than Grace made in 6 months, always looked at his son with an expression that broke her heart, love mixed with helplessness, hope battling against despair. Grace approached their table with her notepad ready. "Good afternoon. What can I get for you today?" The father, she'd heard other staff call him Mr. Donovan, gave her a tired smile. "Grilled cheese and chocolate milk for my son, please. And coffee for me. Black." Grace wrote it down, then crouched down beside the booth so she was at eye level with the boy. "And what's your name?" she asked gently. The boy's eyes flicked to her briefly, then away. He didn't answer. "His name is Ethan," the father said quietly. He doesn't speak." Something in the way he said it, not with embarrassment but with gentle protectiveness, made Grace's heart squeeze. She'd studied enough in her speech therapy courses to recognize that this might be selective mutism or perhaps something neurological. But more than the clinical knowledge, her instinct told her this was a child who had something to say but couldn't find the way to say it. "It's very nice to meet you, Ethan," Grace said, meeting his eyes when he glanced at her again. "I'm Grace. I'll get your lunch ready, okay?" As she walked away, she glanced back and saw the father gently touching his son's hand, saying something too quiet to hear. The love in that gesture stayed with her as she put in their order. Over the next few weeks, Grace found herself watching for them. They came in every Tuesday and Thursday, always the same booth, always the same order. And each time, Grace made a point to crouch down and talk to Ethan, even though he never responded. "How are you today, Ethan? Did you have a good morning? I like your shirt. Blue is a great color. Small things, simple things. Never pushing, never demanding a response, just offering connection." The father, whose name she learned was William Donovan, noticed. One Thursday, as she brought their check, he said quietly, "Thank you for talking to him. Most people don't bother once they realize he won't answer." "He's listening," Grace said simply. "That matters." William's eyes filled with something that looked like gratitude mixed with pain. "Yes, he is." He paused, then added, "He's been nonverbal for 2 years. Since his mother died. The doctors say there's nothing physically wrong with his vocal cords. It's trauma. Selective mutism, they call it." Grace felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm so sorry." "I've tried everything," William continued, and Grace could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "Therapists, specialists, programs, nothing works. He just withdrew into silence, and I don't know how to reach him." Grace looked at Ethan, who was drawing on a napkin with a crayon another waitress had given him. "May I try something?" she asked. William looked surprised, but nodded. Of course. Grace went to the counter and returned with a stack of sticky notes and a pen. She sat down in the booth across from Ethan, and William slid over to give her space. "Ethan," Grace said gently, "I want to show you something. Sometimes when words feel stuck, we can find other ways to talk. Watch." She drew a simple smiley face on a sticky note. "This is how I feel when I see you come into the diner, happy." She drew another face, this one with a downturned mouth. "And this is sad." Another with raised eyebrows. "Surprised." Ethan watched, his eyes tracking her movements. Grace pushed the sticky notes and pen toward him. "Can you show me how you feel right now?" For a long moment, nothing happened. William held his breath. Then slowly, Ethan picked up the pen. He drew carefully on a sticky note, a face with a small, tentative smile. Grace felt her throat tighten. "Happy?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded, the first direct response she'd seen from him. "I'm happy too," Grace said, matching his smile with her own. William's hand covered his mouth, and Grace could see tears in his eyes. Such a small thing, a nodded head, a drawn face, but clearly it was a breakthrough he'd been hoping for. Over the following weeks, the sticky notes became their language. Grace would ask Ethan questions and he'd respond with drawings, faces for emotions, simple pictures for yes or no, increasingly complex sketches as he gained confidence. "Did you like your sandwich?" A thumbs-up drawing. "Are you tired?" A picture of a person lying down with Z's above their head. "What did you do today?" A careful drawing of a playground swing. Grace brought in picture cards, the kind used in speech therapy, and Ethan would point to them to communicate. William watched in amazement as his silent son began to engage, to connect, to express himself in ways he hadn't in 2 years. But what William didn't fully realize, not yet, was that Grace was doing more than just helping Ethan communicate. She was building a foundation, creating a safe space where expression was possible, where communication didn't have to be scary. 3 months after their first meeting on a Tuesday afternoon, something extraordinary happened. Grace had brought Ethan his grilled cheese and chocolate milk, and as usual she crouched down to his level. But this time, she had something new. A small yellow card with simple mouth exercises drawn on it, the kind speech therapists used. "Ethan, I want to show you something," she said gently. "These are just for fun, okay? No pressure. Watch me." She demonstrated simple oral motor exercises, puffing out her cheeks, sticking out her tongue, making exaggerated faces. Ethan watched with interest. "Want to try?" Grace asked. Ethan hesitated, then mimicked her, puffing out his cheeks. Grace clapped softly. "Perfect! You're so good at this!" They went through several exercises together, and Grace noticed William watching intently from his seat. Then Grace did something she'd been building toward for weeks. She pulled out another sticky note and drew a simple balloon. Inside it, she wrote a single letter, H. "This is the first letter of a very important word," Grace said. "Want to know what it is?" Ethan nodded. "Hi," Grace said, pointing to the H. "It's a small word, but it's how we say hello. It's how we start talking to people we care about." She drew more balloons, each with a letter. "I" gives us hi. She looked at Ethan with gentle encouragement. "You don't have to say it, but if you ever want to, I'll be listening." What happened next would become a moment William Donovan would remember for the rest of his life. Ethan looked at the sticky note, then at Grace. Then, in a voice rusty from 2 years of disuse, barely louder than a whisper, he said, "Hi." The diner seemed to stop. Grace's eyes filled with tears. William stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his coffee. "Ethan," William said, his voice breaking. "Did you just—" "Hi, Daddy," Ethan whispered, tears streaming down his face. William dropped to his knees beside the booth, gathering his son into his arms, both of them crying. Grace stepped back, her own tears falling freely as she watched this father and son bridge a 2-year silence with a single word. when they finally pulled apart, William looked at Grace with an expression of such profound gratitude, it was almost overwhelming. "You did this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You found a way to reach him." "No," Grace said softly. "Ethan did this. He was ready. I just showed him it was safe." But William shook his head. "You gave him back his voice. How can I ever thank you?" Over the next hour, as the lunch rush continued around them, Ethan spoke more words, halting, quiet, but unmistakably there. He told his father he loved him. He said he missed Mommy. He said Grace was nice. Small words. Simple sentences. But to William, they were everything. As they were leaving, William approached Grace at the counter. "I need to ask you something. What's your background? How did you know to do all that?" Grace smiled. "I'm in school for speech therapy." "Or I was. I had to take a break when my mom got sick. I've been saving to go back, but it's slow going." William was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out a business card. "I own Donovan Technology Solutions. We have a foundation that provides scholarships for healthcare professionals." He met her eyes. "But more than that, I want to hire you. I want you to work with Ethan to help him continue celebrating his voice. Full-time, whatever salary you need, and I'll pay for the rest of your degree. All of it." Grace stared at him, speechless. "You gave me my son back," William said simply. "Let me give you the chance to do what you were clearly meant to do." 3 years later, Grace Mitchell stood at her graduation, receiving her master's degree in speech-language pathology. In the audience, William sat with Ethan, now 10 years old and talking animatedly about something that had happened at school that day. After the ceremony, Ethan ran up to Grace and hugged her tight. "I'm so proud of you, Grace," he said, his voice clear and strong, nothing like the silent boy who'd once sat in a diner booth, unable to speak. "I'm proud of you too, Ethan," Grace said, hugging him back. "Look how far you've come." "We both came far," Ethan said with wisdom beyond his years. "You helped me find my voice. Daddy helped you finish school. We helped each other." He was right. William had not only paid for Grace's education, but had hired her to direct the speech therapy program at the Donovan Foundation, where she now helped dozens of children find their voices every year. Children who, like Ethan, had something to say but needed someone to show them it was safe to speak. Grace had learned something profound through her work with Ethan. That healing isn't about forcing someone to be ready before they are. It's about creating safety, offering connection, and being present when they finally feel able to take that terrifying step toward expression. And sometimes, in helping others find their voice, we find our own purpose. Grace had thought she was just a waitress marking time, but she'd been exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, noticing a silent child, seeing his pain, and offering him a yellow sticky note and a simple drawing. That small act of kindness, repeated with patience and consistency, had changed 2 lives. Ethan found his voice, and Grace found her calling. "Thank you," William said to Grace that evening at the celebration dinner they'd planned, "for seeing my son when others looked past him, for believing he could speak again when I was starting to lose hope." "Thank you for trusting me," Grace replied, "for letting me try, for believing in what I saw in Ethan." Ethan, sitting between them, smiled, a full, genuine smile, nothing like the silent, withdrawn child of 3 years ago. "Can I say something?" he asked. "Always," Grace and William said in unison. "I think sometimes people forget that being quiet doesn't mean you have nothing to say," Ethan said thoughtfully. "It just means you need someone to listen in a different way." Grace listened different. She heard me even when I wasn't talking. Out of the mouths of babes, Grace thought, wiping tears from her eyes. Because that was the lesson, wasn't it? That everyone has a voice, a story, something important to express. Some people just need someone to slow down, to notice, to create a safe space where that voice can emerge. Grace had been that person for Ethan, and in return, he and his father had given her the chance to be that person for countless others. Sometimes the most extraordinary things grow from the smallest seeds. A waitress who takes an extra moment to crouch down and talk to a silent child, who brings sticky notes and smiles, who refuses to give up even when there's no response. Those small acts of consistent kindness, of seeing people, of creating safety, they ripple outward in ways we can't imagine, changing lives, healing wounds, giving voice to the voiceless. And that's a miracle worth